Something quite important is happening here in Singapore right now, and you wouldn't notice it if you were just walking around. Everything looks completely normal. Shops are open, people are out, you can see them behind me. The system's working just the way you'd expect. But behind that, there is a very deliberate effort underway to secure energy supply. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been meeting with Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, and a key focus of those talks has been fuel, and specifically how to keep it flowing if global supply chains tighten further. Because Singapore imports almost all of its energy, and Australia supplies a very significant share of its LNG. But of course, it's not one way. Singapore is a major refining hub, and Australia depends on it for a meaningful share of its refined fuel. So what you're looking at here is a reciprocal system. Energy flows in both directions. And what both countries are doing now is working towards a more formal, legally binding kind of arrangement to make sure that those flows continue, even under pressure. And that tells you something. This isn't just cooperation, it's mutual dependence that's being formalised. Now, Singapore refines fuel and sends it back out into the region. Australia supplies upstream energy into that system. So it's tightly connected, and both sides rely on it working. But for me, it also raises a question. Australia has enormous natural resources. We export energy at scale. So why are we still so dependent on imported refined fuel? Partnerships like this one matter. They make the system more resilient, but they also highlight how very exposed we are. Because even with all of that resource, we don't fully control the end-to-end supply. And this is where it starts to matter for businesses. Because if you're operating across borders, you're relying on systems like this one. Fuel, logistics, and energy, all working without interruption. And what this tells you is that governments are starting to treat those systems as very strategic. They're locking in supply, they're formalising relationships, reducing uncertainty wherever they can. So the environment companies are operating in is shifting, not necessarily away from globalisation, but towards something more structured and more deliberate. And what you're seeing here is a system that still works, but is starting to think much more seriously and carefully about what happens if it doesn't.